like, I want to interview you. I'm so fascinated by your story.
No, not at all. I'm boring. Yeah, now, so thank you so much for being here. I love your story, and would kind of like to share it with my audience. So if you're willing, I'd just love for you to kind of give your story.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity because really I've never shared my story. And so even just this process gave me the opportunity to like really sit down and think about my story and reflect on it because I really hadn't.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. I get that. So what happened?
Gosh. Well, okay, so I guess I'll go back to the beginning in that, I wasn't really raised religious in my household,
Okay.
but my extended family really was. So, like my aunt and uncle were
Oh, okay.
pastors of a church. And so a lot of the family went to that church and grew up in that. And
Sure.
so I had an uncle who was a famous Christian singer. And so just
Oh,
growing up,
yeah?
yes,
Who?
his name is Javier Martinez in the
Okay.
Spanish
I don't
world.
know. Well, so, lo siento mucho, pero mi español no, bueno, pero habla poquito. So.
Ah, muy bien. So yes, I was raised with a lot of the, and they're kind of charismatic Christians. So I was raised with a lot of the, don't play
Okay.
video games. There's demons in there, and
Okay.
don't
Yeah.
wear hoop
Did you
earrings.
witness the speaking in tongues and faith healing and all that?
Oh yes,
Okay, so you saw that. Yeah.
and exorcism and
Oh, you saw
all
exorcisms.
of
Nice. Nice. All right, cool. Yeah, I never got to see that. I think I was close one time when I was preaching in New Zealand that a lady was gonna act out, and I got close one time. But yeah, I never saw that. That's dope.
And I don't know if I consider it like full exorcism, but just like
Yeah,
hearing stories through the church of when
gotcha.
those
Of when the
days.
demons were present and stuff.
Yeah. So I wasn't there, but like I grew up hearing all
I
the
see.
stories.
I heard stories too. I
Yeah.
never actually saw some of the stuff, but I always heard the stories. Yeah, that's very interesting. I had actually some friends that went to India on a mission trip and claimed that a woman like became a serpent and was slithering across the floor, type of thing. And I was just like, all right. I mean, I mean, you're saying it.
Yes, and I did for a time. Went to, I guess, predominantly Black church, and so it was a little bit
Okay.
more to like on the ground and woo, like feeling the spirit and like those kind of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So I also was a youth pastor at a interracial church, and they actually advertise themselves as an interracial church. And so I spent time there, and I played guitar, in the band and everything like that. But so yeah, I'm familiar. Yeah.
yeah, so I wasn't necessarily brought up with that at home, and I
Okay.
had a great upbringing. Did well in school, like just had a really nice life, and then I was very much into music in the music world, and so I
Yeah.
think part of
Do
that
you
I
do
was
do you play instruments and or sing, or what is it
sing
that you're a singer?
singer, yes.
Awesome. Very cool.
And so I think part of that, I was exposed to a lot of gay homosexual people in that world, and
I know, right? I don't know what
since
the
I
deal
was
is,
little.
but the theater world is full of all of the here's the thing. I actually was an actor in high school, and I did theater, and I mean, yeah, there's an affinity for that. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I
and
didn't
so
dance. I never was a dancer, unfortunately. I
your
don't have
rhythms
that.
and the instruments,
Yeah, yeah, I can do,
the
you know,
guitar.
that stuff. But yeah, no dancing. Um, so
Uh,
you were introduced
so
to
so
Christianity through your extended family.
Well, so what
When
I was gonna say is that
y-
as a singer, then once I got to college, then I was like recruited by the campus church to be their worship singer. And that's
Gotcha,
kind of how I got more
gotcha,
and more
gotcha,
involved.
gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was always like I always grew up with it. So I always claimed that
Mhm.
I was Christian and I always was raised with the ideas, but I wasn't going to church every weekend growing up. And we
Okay,
didn't like grow
okay,
up reading the Bible or anything like that. So all
okay,
of that came
okay.
later, like college time.
Yeah, I mean, your husband is like full blown, like was all into it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is when we met and got married, we
Uh-huh.
both weren't religious. We were
Oh
both kind of raised a
wow. So
little
this
like
was all
new age.
pre. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Then once we got together,
Cool.
then my cousin invited us to his church. I think it was like singles thing, and the pastor was like really cool and hip, and
Of
we got
course. Yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
And
That's what you
then
gotta have, man. It's marketing.
yeah. And then my husband got on fire for the Lord and, got his bachelor's, his master's in theology.
Wow.
Um, and then we like kind of started little church in our house. And then when we joined a church, we started
Yeah.
a Spanish ministry and,
Did that too.
was always involved in that. The mission trips, was on the
Yeah.
worship team, taught Sunday school. And then he became a pastor.
Wow. 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 But you did that together.
Together. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. So what happened?
So I think a time came where I was just questioning a lot. I think the gay thing really bothered me because I'm like, how are we supposed to expect these people who are obviously so gay to be with the opposite sex? Like that's wouldn't make sense. Like why would we want that for them, you know?
Right. Yeah, they're very much unhappy
Yeah,
with that
exactly.
construct. Why would we force that? I get it. All right. So that bothered you.
And
And so what'd you do about it?
at the core, I was always like, but God is love. Like how that is love. Like how is that
Yeah.
wrong? I don't get it.
Yeah.
And then with I think the whole 2020 election, um
Yes.
wait, I guess that would have no, not 2020. I guess it would have been 2016
Yeah,
when
2016.
everything
I
yeah,
yep.
when everything was coming out about Trump and all these Christians were
Yep.
supporting him and it was just like
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing this on this side and like I'm seeing
Mm-hmm.
love on this side. Like I was just questioning.
I had the same moment. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And
So what'd you do about it?
so then after I feel like that was years of struggling, finally I'm like, okay, God, I am going to question you
Yeah.
and like please let me like I want forgive me if I'm doing the wrong thing, but like I need to
Yeah.
try this. I need to know. And
Right.
I think I also heard of a pastor who wrote a book like A Year Without God. And so that's kind of one of what I wanted to try out. Like, let me try on these
Yeah.
goggles of a work or glasses of a world where God doesn't exist. And I tried
Wow.
it on. Everything made sense. All the mysteries, all the questions were
Wow.
best answered. But then I was left with these things that I previously attributed to God, like some if somebody's evil or maybe the beginning, how all of this came about. And so I
Oh,
really
yeah,
took a
sure.
deep
Yeah.
dive into what the real answer is, what the evidence points to.
Mm. Mm.
So I arrived at a moment where I was like, okay, forget about what's good or bad. Okay. Because the religion tells you this is good, this is bad. I'm like, okay, forget about what's good or bad. Let me just start off with what's true.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
scrapped everything. I scrapped everything and I'm like, I just want to see what
So
is real, what the
did
evidence is showing
did
me.
you did you take a dive into like study of epistemology and existentialism and things like that, or how did you pursue trying to find your foundation for what's true? What did you pursue? How'd you go about it?
I started at the very simplest stage, like, okay, what can I see? What can we prove? What is something that we know without a doubt? Let me just start there.
Yeah, how do you get
And
there?
well, so then
Because the
I,
problem of hard solipsism emerges immediately whenever you start seeking concrete, you know. So how'd you get there? What did you find?
but there is a lot out there and it's all pointing to another direction. So I studied a lot about evolution
Okay.
and
All right. So
and
you
really tried to learn like how
took
it
a deep
really
dive
happened.
into that. Um, okay,
I,
so did it ever like the problem of abiogenesis, was that ever something that emerged while you were seeking answers?
yes, very much so, and
Okay. And so what do
dove
you do with that?
into I I feel like there's reasonable theories out there and none of
Yeah.
them include God and all of them
Yeah.
include reality that is,
Yeah.
and some of it is replicatable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my favorite quote is from Sean Carroll uh, um, lecture where he said that the purpose of life is to hydrogenate dioxide. That's and so it can be reduced to that, is that life emerged because entropy, because things want to regress and become simpler. And
when
yeah, so
with
anyway.
I mean, that's a tough question when people are like, well, if God doesn't exist, well, how did this all come about? And it's so
Yeah,
hard to articulate it. And so the way that I've simplified it is to say it's really chemistry plus physics plus time.
that's it. Yeah,
That's it.
and then you arrive here, and it's not that complicated. And yeah, I think you're absolutely on point with that. Absolutely. So you started with um delving into evolution. Yes. Was that where
Among,
your starting point was?
oh gosh,
Or was it cosmology or astrophysics, or what was it that you first really decided, I'm going to take this year without God? What did you dive into first?
I feel like I had many different trails going at the same time because
Sure, sure.
I was also watching a lot of Dr. Phil
Oh
and
goodness.
I was learning about how they literally have brain scans and it can explain why somebody is, evil or like it's okay, they lack
Oh
the
wow.
impulse control
Dr.
and
Phil covered shit
physical.
like that.
Yes, and he showed
Seriously.
people
Wow.
that
That
have
sounds like
issues.
Robert Sapolsky stuff. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay. So you started getting introduced to how the prefrontal cortex can affect the way that somebody acts and behaves, and gray matter and white matter and different things like that. And so you started hearing these things. And so it started to make you what? Question
No, and then I
this right versus wrong, good versus evil. What was it?
more so explaining your personality. So it's
Ah,
not like
oh, okay.
God
Okay.
made you this way. It's like your
Right.
brain
Yeah,
is
it's your
wired
brain.
this way. Or it's not a
Got it.
spirit
Got
or a
it. That's
human,
cool. That's
it's
cool.
your
Okay.
brain.
Okay, so you came to this revelation that there's not a God part to you, that it's just brain.
Yeah, and part of
Is that what
realizing
it
when
was,
it's
or no? Or did I
no,
misunderstand?
no, you're right. And then
Okay.
to add to that, it's also replacing the need for a spirit, a soul, and
Right.
realizing that there's no
There's
evidence
no
for
mechanism there.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's
right.
no evidence. So starting with
Yeah,
what's true, what do we know? It's like we don't know
yeah.
even if spirit exists or a soul,
I
but it is
I do
explainable.
think the soul is the most dead concept that there is. I mean, we just have so much research on the mind and the brain and everything that people want to attach to a soul. It can just be pointed back to the brain and the function that the brain does and the mind does. And
Right.
so so is that what you discovered on your with through your studies?
Right. And just learning more about the brain scans
I'm
and
drinking
then
a beer,
also
sorry.
no worries. And then even like even explaining the gay thing, it's hormones and chromosomes and
Yeah, it's
gender.
not anybody's fault that they're this way. And
Right. It's
so
biological.
to blame someone, to put the label of sin on someone whenever this is just their chemistry. This is just their biology. This is just their makeup. And then
Right.
to blame them, it just seems wrong, right? It's was that what it was for you too?
Definitely. Because it's like, man, we've been spending all this time, praying for these people or
Yeah.
blaming these people, shaming these people
Mm,
instead of getting them help.
mm. And shame
So,
is such a horrible thing to do to people.
and that leads to
Guilt and
more
shame.
mental issues and more drug
Yeah,
abuse and
yeah,
the thing that they're judging.
yeah. Wow. Okay. So you started there,
Okay.
then?
Then my husband
Yeah.
was very much still a Christian.
Yes.
In fact, I came out to him and said, like, I'm doubting and
Yeah.
it did not go over well.
No? Was it rough? How'd that conversation go?
Well, so his initial reaction, it was very much like kind of how you would expect somebody who's deep in that belief and like, get away from me, devil woman, like that kind of thing. But
Get thee behind me, Satan.
yeah, like not in this
Was it really
house.
like that?
Yeah, not in this house.
Oh
I
my
can't
goodness.
allow this. And I was
Oh.
like, this is me. Take it or leave it. And he never said anything after that. He was really
Mm,
supportive after that
really?
talk.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
We kind of didn't talk about it for a while. Meanwhile, he was taking um, like Bible online courses from Yale,
Mhm.
Harvard, and
Yeah.
these scholars tell the truth about the Bible. And the truth is that it's tied. So many things are wrong. So many things are not
Yeah.
historical.
Mhm.
Archaeological evidence disproves the biblical
Mhm.
claims.
Yep.
Um, so
Unfortunately, it's very contradictory.
then he started learning about mythology and history.
Oh, wow.
And
So
there was,
that's my fiance, that's her degree is in uh Greek mythology and
oh
history. Yeah.
my gosh,
Yeah,
so interesting.
she's so smart. It's yeah, she's insane. But
So
anyway.
you get it then about how many ties there are to
Oh,
Greek
oh my gosh.
gods.
Yeah, it's insane. The correlations between mythos. Yeah. I have a diagram like hung up in my kid's room that's just the Greek tree of mythos and just spreads out and tells you everything about how it all correlates and which gods are what and when they were invented and different things like that. And it's so relevant to the Christian
Nice.
mythos. It is so closely connected. And I don't know. I think the first time I really started to consider that human sacrifice and torture
Mm.
was a God thing,
Oh,
because when I was a kid, it was just this person suffered for you and that was a gift. But then I started to consider later, like, okay, so human sacrifice and torture is something that a loving God requires?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Huh. And
And
I
then,
I never could reconcile that.
yeah,
I still to this day, it's like, you're relying on a blood cult, human sacrifice and torture. You know that, right? Like, that's what you're loving. You're eating it. You're
yeah,
literally eating it
yeah.
on Sundays when you do communion, you know, you're literally eating it. I mean,
There's a lot of things that are corrupted to be
it's so
love that aren't
strange.
love.
It
It's
can't
not.
be. It can't be. How? How? Torture
And
and
then to
human
learn
sacrifice.
he
Yeah.
wasn't the first God to do all
Oh.
that. Oh, there was
Oh,
so
no, no,
many
no.
before then.
No. Yeah, there's tons of them that required that, you know. I mean, the mythos of it all, the fabric. It once you and that well, here's the problem with it though. So people like Jordan Peterson will advocate for this archetype that it's necessary for good behavior and for you to be a good humanist and for you to be a good person. So that's where sometimes the question comes in, are we better off without?
Without religion, without a God theology or
Yeah, the
something belief.
archetypes, the mythos, are we better off without? And that's the question. Are we? Can we
I
do better without it?
I think we're living proof that we can. I think at the
Mm,
core of your belief in God is your desire to want to love, to give, to do
mhm,
well, to live a life worth living.
mm,
And I think that that is a part of you that's within you.
right.
And
Yeah.
so I mean Christian people, yes, the biblical teachings can corrupt their thinking, but for the very most part, like they're great people, like have good intentions in
For the
their
most
heart of
part, it
to,
seems like it.
yeah.
And I think even, what's crazy is, I even think about I have conservative, right-wing Christian parents that, are Trump supporters and all that type of thing.
Uh,
Yeah, lots of fun. Um,
Are they
and
still in your life, like actively in your life?
my mom is, but not my dad.
Mm.
Um, but so whenever I consider how they justify, like the right-wing agenda, like this pro-life, and it's like I'm like, it's not pro-life, you're anti-choice. You're not you're not really advocating for life because you're in favor of the death penalty. You love war and you're happy for us to go to war with anybody that's of a Muslim faith. Um you're
And
you're not you're
you
not
receive
pro-life.
the benefits of a child sacrifice.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you're absolutely okay with the fact that a human sacrifice was required for your salvation. You're not pro-life. So
Mhm.
what is it that you're really pushing? What is it, what are you really after? And it's control. At the end of the day, it's just it's it hurts my heart, but
Mm.
it really boils down to control and people believing that they have a moral absolute whenever they don't. I mean, not at all. Not even close. There's not even a good argument for it.
And my biggest thing is just that it's not true, and it's proven to be not true. So, for example, in the church, they're teaching just from the Bible. Everyone's assuming the Bible's true. That's all they hear. But once you start hearing what scholars, academics, archaeologists, historians, people who are experts in the Bible, the language, the region, the artifacts
Yeah.
are all saying this is a folklore,
It's
this is
just
myth,
yeah, it's myth. It's
this,
folklore.
and
It's
most of the
bullshit.
artifacts found are actually for other gods that predate Yahweh, and yet we
Yeah.
don't have any original
Yeah.
writings
Yeah.
for the Bible, but we have original writings, the cuneiform of the
The
myths
Egyptian gods are so much more
before.
well documented. Yeah.
Yes, and it's the same stories. Like, wait, that person also got put in a basket and put down the river, and then grew up
Yeah,
with
what's up with that?
royalty, and like that sounds familiar.
Wow. I wonder where that story came from, since there is no historical Moses, and we know that for a fact now.
Yeah, and so it all
Pretty
starts unraveling after that. Wait, no Moses, well then there's no Ten Commandments, and there's no Exodus, well then there's no comparison of Jesus to Moses.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just like all starts unraveling.
So I was speaking with Brady Goodwin. I don't know if you're familiar.
Fanatic,
Okay,
yes.
yeah, Fanatic. So I was he and I had a podcast interview previously. And the thing that happened for him was similar, that whenever he discovered that there were Christians, Christian scientists who were advocating for evolution, and after the Human Genome Project and Francis Collins sequenced our DNA and recognized that we are related to chimpanzees, and half a chromosome away and things like that. So Brady started to break that down and think, well, then there can't be an Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
And he was like, wait a minute, all these guys are saying that evolution is real, this is true, this is factual, but you can't have an Adam and Eve.
I was like, did God create Neanderthals too? Because they were the first
Because we're related and
human,
some of
yeah.
us still share DNA.
And
Yeah.
by the way, like I want your audience to hear this because it blew my mind. I went
Yeah.
to the Natural Museum or Natural History Museum in New York City, and they
Okay.
have a full exhibit on human evolution. And you can
Seriously.
see the skeletons side
That
by
is so
side.
fucking cool.
It
Right.
was amazing. I was
That's
like
amazing.
put in a candy
I
store.
went to the Smithsonian in DC, and they also have one. And you can
Oh,
actually sit down and the computer will generate what your Neanderthal ancestors look like and things like that. So yeah, you can like take a picture and print it out and things like that. So it's fun.
so
Um,
cool.
I love shit like that. That is so cool. So
And
it's in Manhattan.
in yes,
Okay,
in
because
Manhattan.
I went there, and if I had known about that, I would have gone. I went to yeah, a Broadway play while I was there, and I also went to the Comedy Cellar because I love stand up comedy. Nerd like that. But anyway, yo, so
And I have to say
yes,
too, this is
yes,
much of an
please
example.
continue, please.
There was also an exhibit of biodiversity, and they showed like starting from the simplest, bacteria and worm, and how all the life, first an optic nerve was created in the worm, and how that passes
Right,
on to
right,
the
right.
next species, and just how it's all connected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like crustaceans, and so it'd be shrimp into lobster into and you see exactly how they're all connected and what
That's
little
so
changes
cool.
connect
That's
them. So
so cool.
anyway, it was amazing.
No, that's so cool. Awesome. Yeah, I can't remember if it was Cosmos or Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, but one of the Neil deGrasse Tyson productions went over how eyes develop. and
Mhm.
and then how evolution happens with canines, and how wolves now are a completely different species, and speciation has happened in a matter of 10,000 years, and on a spectrum that's like, look at a chihuahua. I mean, that is not close to it's and so it
Or a
was
Great
just,
Dane.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it was just really interesting to see the breakdown. It's like, that's happened on such a short scale, and think about millions of years, and most people can't even imagine $1 million, much less
Right.
a million years, and we're talking about millions of years.
Hundreds of millions of years. Yeah.
Yes, and billions even, for this process to have happened. And Forrest Valkai is even mentioned several times on several podcasts and interviews. We find RNA on asteroids. Protein exists out in the universe. It's out
Mm,
there. The building blocks of life are,
right.
we find them on rocks. Like, it happened. Sorry,
Right. Right.
sorry,
And
it happened.
when people say, "Oh, well, the chances of all this just happen to
Just
happen
happened.
is like one in the whatever millionth power," and I'm like, "Yeah, do you know how many galaxies there are? There's billions and billions of galaxies. So the
And it
odds
happened.
it can happen."
It happened. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what to
And
tell you, but it happened. And
yeah.
we only have the one planet to investigate. So I don't know how they come up with these calculations of the probabilities. We really are only investigating one planet out of a universe that is pretty massive, I would say. So
Yeah.
what are
Big.
yeah, it's kind of big. Yeah, and so we're investigating. It's like Neil deGrasse Tyson said. It's like taking a cup and going to the ocean and pulling it up and going, well, there are no wells in the ocean,
Mm,
and that's basically what people are doing whenever they they have these claims. It's like, dude, you have one planet.
mhm.
What do you think you're doing?
Yes. But that was the biggest thing is like, but we have the evidence. This is what the evidence is pointing to right
Right,
here. It's
right, right,
reality,
right. And
and there is
so
no
was
reality.
that the starting point though? So it started with evolution. Yeah.
I would say I was like learning many things at the same time, but it was
Okay.
all
Okay.
I was just looking at the
All right.
facts and saying, okay, what is
When
the
did
fact
you
telling me?
recognize that you no longer believed at all? When did you have a moment, or was it just kind of, it just disappeared?
Ooh, I can't think of a moment. I think I
That's
think
okay.
it's because I was also not willing to admit it to myself just yet. Like
Oh yeah,
I can't
yeah. I
say
had
it
a
out loud.
big time period with that. Yeah.
Like who
Yeah.
can I tell that I'm even thinking about this? Because my
Mm.
husband's a pastor, and he's still so
Right.
then he started unraveling and so I'm like,
Yeah.
so what are you saying? Are you saying you don't believe? And he couldn't say it for a little bit until
No,
finally.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's hard. It's hard. Man, it hurts the first time you say it. I don't know why. I cried. I wept like a
Oh,
baby. Um,
wow.
yeah, so yeah, I was with my ex-wife. I can tell you the exact moment. I was
Please.
yes. So I was with my ex-wife, and I said, I'm going to write a question down on this, on my, because I kept yellow pads everywhere, and I write all the time and scribble things. And I said, I'm going to write down a question. I don't want you to do anything but just ask me the question.
Oh my
And
God.
And she was like, okay. And I did. I wrote down exactly what you said. Do you believe in God?
Oh my gosh, I'm getting
I
goosebumps.
know. And so I handed it to her, handed her the yellow notepad, and she said, do you believe in God? And it took me a long fucking time.
Whoa.
I stared at the ground and
Hmm.
no, I don't. And I
Hmm.
still feel it to this day.
Yeah.
The impact of that moment, just noting it, just saying my truth. No, I don't. Not anymore.
Hmm.
It was hard and it hurt, but it felt good to get it out.
Yeah. And it's like once you take that step, then it's like, okay, I survived. This was okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, nobody died.
Because that was part of it too, is I also wanted to live to see
Mm,
if I stop believing, if all these bad things start happening to me, if I start getting depressed, if,
right. Yeah. I
and I wanted
know. I
to
quit
wait.
tithing first. I that was like the thing I did like back in 2016, like way before I deconverted. I stopped tithing because I was like, I don't buy it.
Oh, so this is kind of new for you too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I haven't been a believer for about 6 years, but the first thing I did was stop tithing. I was I did the doctrine didn't make any sense to me anymore. And I was just like, I don't buy it. I don't think if you give 10% of your income, you're going to gain wealth. And then if you offer more offerings, you're going to gain more wealth. The whole, prosperity message, I just was like, nah, I don't buy it. And so the first thing I stopped doing was tithing. And it was interesting because I would have people that would swear that their business increased and that their wealth increased and that everything when they started tithing. And I was just like, well, I've had the opposite experience. I have more wealth now because I am not giving 10% to something that I don't really care about. Building a new church fund and more pianos and guitars, and I'm not paying for that.
Oh,
And so I don't know. It was so strange though to hear people who their experience and their account was that they were gaining wealth from giving this 10%. And
I,
I go
yeah.
ahead, go ahead. No, no, no. I want to hear what your opinion is on that.
I think correlation can be found in
Yeah,
so many
yeah,
things.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
and I had to prove to myself that that wasn't true. So after I
yeah,
stopped leaving,
yeah.
I got my dream job, making more
Oh
money than
wow.
ever. And so I proved to myself that
That's
no, it's
that's
not just
awesome.
coming from God. Like it can happen just because,
Just
the
because.
opportunity arrives, you
Yeah,
pursue
just
that
because the
opportunity.
cosmos and the stars align and just the chaos of the universe, and sometimes you get lucky and just stuff comes together. What's wrong with
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, they're looking, they're hiring, I'm looking.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
interviewed,
yeah,
they
yeah,
liked me.
yeah,
Boom.
yeah. It
That's
didn't have
that's
to be a
enough
Holy
of an
Spirit.
explanation. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so you didn't. I shared with you that I had a moment of
Mhm.
deconversion. So you didn't really have a particular moment.
Um, well, okay, so um, I think where I was confronted with my new beliefs is with our kids. Our kids were saying
Mm.
like I
How
thought we
old
can't do this.
how old are
Uh,
your kids? Kiddos?
they're now 13 and 14.
Okay. So my kiddo is 14, almost 15. So,
Okay.
all right. So I'm in
I
the
think
same.
that same life stage.
Well, yeah. So he grew up with me originally being a believer, right? And
Mhm.
now he knows that I am an outspoken, um, I guess, dullard and atheist. So
Mhm.
simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, so there came a well, I guess so no, I don't think there was a moment for me. I think still had all these like unanswered questions, and until I had
Mm,
all of the questions answered, I wasn't
right.
gonna fully admit to myself.
Got it.
But then there was kind of a moment, I guess there was a moment where I'm like, okay, well that answers all my questions. Like everything's pointing to this. So I'm gonna be open to admit this to myself.
Wow. Okay. This is kind of a random question. What what do you ground yourself in foundationally for like truth now? So you said you started with evolution and things like that, which I get, but now that you've had time to think about it, what do you ground yourself in as truth, as like your foundation, your rock?
Just reality, evidence, what can be observed.
Okay.
So I like
So
one quote from a former pastor who said, I used to believe in the seen and the unseen.
okay.
And now I realize there's only what you can see is the only thing you can know. The unseen you
Okay.
can't possibly know. So there's only what you can know and
So
what you
you
can't know.
so you base your foundation on your sensory modalities, your sight, your hearing, your smell, your taste, your touch. Is that accurate or no?
Yes, and I understand that like for example, you can be misled in seeing something that's an optical illusion. I
I'm a
think
magician.
yeah,
I can do that now.
right. And my husband practiced magicianship as
Oh,
well.
okay, cool, 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 cool.
And
Right on.
so when I say reality,
Hmm.
that's part of it as well. So not just evidence, but reality. And reality is looking at the different explanations and which explanation is provable. Does
Okay,
that
so
make sense?
you rely on demonstrable something that okay. I like these questions because we are bound to our senses, and unfortunately, they're very unreliable. So whenever I like to find out what people's new foundation is, how they ground themselves, and how maybe not everybody thinks about it, but I do. I consider it quite a bit, and I have found a grounding in the logical absolutes, the law of identity, excluded middle, and non-contradiction. That's where I've grounded myself mathematically. It's what I can rely upon.
And I
And
think to add to what you're saying, I think understanding fallacies are important.
yes, I agree. And
Mhm.
it's something that is so easy to miss. I mean, straw man arguments are everywhere. They're like on social media and the news, like it's constant, and then you've got this tu quoque fallacy that keeps coming up, which is like
You
Well, what
too.
about you?
Them too. Yeah.
Yeah, what about you? You know, and it's like, but you didn't address
Hmm.
subject. Um, yeah, so there are so many things, that need to be considered. And
Right.
so that's why I ask, other atheists or igtheists or whatever you are, um, what is your grounding? Where do you, find a placeholder?
That's it. Like really digging deep and analyzing it and making sure it
Mm,
passes all the tests. Because if
mm,
it's true, it should be consistent. It should be
passes the
demonstrable.
test.
It should be measurable usually.
Okay. What about things like justice?
My like I'm totally okay with people having their own opinions
Hmm.
on moral issues. My
Okay.
big
All right.
thing is just the facts. Like, do you have the right facts? So that
Okay.
almost don't want to get into that because I feel like that's
Well, that's what's called a
dependent on the
predicate.
situation, right?
It's called a predicate nominative, and it's used in hypnosis in order to induce trance-like states. And the reason is because it's a noun that's not really a noun. So it's not like my dog that I could put in a wheelbarrow and push over to you, but it's still a noun. So we call it justice, and you're supposed to conceive it in the same way that you do my dog, like a noun. It's a real thing that you can grasp. So that's kind of how do you deal with those subjects now?
Well, I think the important thing is to have all the information that you can possibly have. So like I'm going to tie this back to like the 10 commandments and morality because
Okay.
it's like set law. This is what's right. This is what's
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
This should
yeah.
be punished this way. And it's like a system of justice in a sense, right? But
Yes.
almost every single one of those commandments in different scenarios are acceptable. Like, thou shalt not kill. Well, if you're a
Mm.
soldier at war, you can kill.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do? Yeah, yeah.
If you're a vet euthanizing a suffering pet, you're killing, is that
Mm.
so I
Yeah,
think in every
kindness.
situation is going to be so unique, so different. Um, so I say that that's why we have court and we hear the case and we hear all the details and we gather all the evidence. I think that's what
I
I
I
that
I,
I,
I definitely hear what you're saying. It's just what you're the grounding. That's my question. Is how do you ground yourself? What is it that you base your ethics and morality and your ability to judge what is an abstract concept and things like that now, because if I can project a bit,
Mhm.
my grounding before was God and
Mhm.
his morality and it was the arbiter of ultimate truth and everything that exists. So where do you go from there?
I can you be more specific on the question?
Sure. God was the answer for everything. Truth, morality, reality, everything. Why we exist at all. But you abandoned that. You got rid of that belief. So now what?
I mean,
Now what do you ground?
I guess I'd have to know what the specific situation is, but
All right,
just
sure.
generally, I mean, I would say it's based on reason.
Okay.
It's
Reason
just
and logic. That's
reason,
that's
logic, facts, And then like
That's
also soul searching in the sense like I discover what do I want? What do I need? What do I feel like I want of my life? And
okay. So
then
you also now have a self that you can respect and appreciate. Is that like before you were a servant, right? Like you were a slave to
yeah,
Christ, you know?
you're right. Yeah.
So now you're saying that now you are driven by you are okay with your own desires. You get to be self-driven a little bit now.
That's
Is
such a
that
good point. Yes,
okay?
I have been through this process empowered
Mm,
to to
you're free kind of.
be against things that I am against, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
So now you
Mm.
have some freedom.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. That's great. I love
See, it's
that.
you asking me these questions makes me realize that it's that this is really cool to reflect on that.
Well, we went through a similar process, and then sometimes it's good to kind of think about it and what did it take? What did you go through? What did you imagine? What did you think? What did you recall? And I just
Do
think sometimes it's good for us to do it.
Mhm. Do you have any regrets?
I do. I do. Um,
And you don't have to say, I mean, you don't have to get into it.
no, it
I'm
was
just
the faith
curious.
healings. The faith healings.
Mhm.
I wish I could take all those back. I wish I could talk to every single person that that I did that to. Um, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I didn't know it was fake. I didn't know that it was the placebo effect and it was adrenaline and things like that. I had just learned it from, you know, witnessing it and watching it and different things like that.
Mhm.
I wish I could apologize. So that for sure is
Mhm.
I wish I could apologize to every single person for that.
Well, I love that you are using that as motivation to fuel your advocacy because what you're doing is important and getting the word out to many people.
Well, I mean, I hope so. We'll see. It's so far it's been, a bit lackluster, but I can't help but do this now. Um, I did so much harm before and spread so much misinformation, and it wasn't dishonest at all. It was something that I honestly believed at the time. And so I don't feel bad. I don't think I was doing it intentionally. However, now that I know, I'd like to rectify it, and I'd like to do better. And hopefully the world will be a better place. I hope if we can be, like you say, more honest and base ourselves in reality.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
um,
And care
I think
less
the
about
world,
the person's soul after they die,
yeah,
after they're
yeah,
dead
and
underground.
try to be good here and now.
Right, instead of
You
trying
know,
to really hear them now. That's I wish I was a better friend before because I
mm,
feel like I was thinking about their soul.
yeah.
Oh, so I don't know if I told you, but my husband and I have a podcast.
Yeah, please share, yeah, promote. Yeah.
So I was just gonna share. So like, really, he's got his master's in theology and reads biblical Hebrew and Greek and has
I watched
really
one of your podcasts already.
yeah. So he
Yeah.
nerds out on that,
Yeah,
and
he's a smart dude.
he is. And so that's what that's our advocacy is like teaching really what the Bible really does say, and thinking
Yeah.
critically about it, and
Mm,
tying it back to what it really means and where this comes from. And
mm,
then you
mm.
realize, okay, that this isn't what I think it is. It's not a manual
Uh,
for life. It's ancient literature,
yeah.
mythology.
Yep. Mythos.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so what's the podcast? What's the
It's
name?
called Apostate of Mind.
Apostate of mind.
Yeah. So apostate is someone who leaves religion. So it's like apostate of mind.
I like it. Okay.
uh,
Well, I will drop a link whenever I share this on my YouTube channel. Um, I really appreciate this conversation, and thank you so much for like your honesty, your sincerity. It's really, really refreshing to get to talk to people, who have been down a similar path and are willing to really share their heart. And so I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thanks for reaching out and for having me and for doing this podcast. Because I know a lot of time and preparation and editing and all that goes into it, and it
Ah.
really does help people.
Well, let's hope. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hey, I think you're awesome. I would love to have a conversation with your husband, and I think you're great, and I think that you guys should really be more popular because I uh, I think you're doing something really great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
Well,
I'm
we.
gonna let you go now.
All right.
All
Well, now
right.
we're connected. Now we're a community, so we can always help each other out. Feel free to
If
reach out
if you
anytime.
guys ever need anything, holler at me.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great night.
You too.